Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I am Oshman37 and today we are going to be reviewing our first TV show. And that show is the Shannara Chronicles, Season 1. I haven't watched Season 2. Now, just a disclaimer before I begin. I have not read the books in this series, so anything negative I say about the show, I'm not talking about the books. I have not read them yet. I bet they're pretty good if they made a whole show about it, but I have not read it yet, so any judgment towards the show does not go towards the book. Now, when I first started watching, I thought it was pretty strange that this show was made by MTV, of all people. Like, I only thought they were making music videos over there, but apparently they're making fully fleshed out fantasy shows. And by the looks of it, it was pretty high production. The CGI or costumes, the production was just very high value. The costumes looked as realistic as a fantasy show could be. And all around, I was just pretty impressed that MTV made a fantasy show that looks pretty good. Now, not only does the sets and the costumes look great, but also like the scenery in the show. Like, this is a very beautiful show. Like, I can't think of a fantasy show that's this beautiful in terms of like land around them and just like scenic shots, like horse riding somewhere. It's gorgeous in that way. And also like the made up city of the elves in this show, it's beautiful. Like, all around the show, if there's one thing I can give it props for, they definitely did not cheap out on making this. The whole premise of this show is really interesting to me. It's based in a world where humans got in some giant war, probably nuclear, and everyone was wiped out and civilization as we know it gone. And then after that, humans, the few humans that survived evolved into like trolls, gnomes, elves, and then there's still regular humans there. And I thought this was a really interesting concept because they talk about like ancient people, you know, and it's just us, and then you can see like the ruins of our culture just strewn about during the show, and I thought that was really interesting. So anyways, the story takes place like thousands of years after most of the humans die off, and the elves, gnomes, humans, and trolls, they all hate each other. And then the demons start coming back from this land called the Forbidding, and Amberly, the main character, she's an elf, has to stop them and by making this tree regrow. It sounds pretty simple and basic, but as the show goes on and the world gets more nuanced and the characters get to actually develop more, unlike in the first couple episodes, it really becomes an interesting story. Now, the biggest problems that I have with the show came around in the early episodes, which isn't shocking for a TV show, but in the first 3 episodes, everything felt a little rushed. Like, I don't know how they did it in terms of the book, whether it was half a season per book or whatever, but for the first half of the season, it feels like all the characters were just changing super fast. Like, these people meet each other and then like they barely talk at all, and then there's already like a relationship about to happen. It feels like the show wants you to know that they're having development, but not actually showing the development at all. Also in this show, in the beginning, it feels like a very basic fantasy story. Like, you have these elves and they're like the high rulers of the land or whatever, and then you have demons coming back to kill them all. Like, that's a pretty basic concept. There's no moral middle in that. There's just elves versus demons. Well, all the lands. The show definitely improves as time goes on, as most shows do, but this one, you can definitely tell like a break between when it's just like really rushed and fast paced and like you can barely understand what's going on, between like an actual nuanced story that's going places and has foreshadowing and is fun to watch. And in the last half of the season, I found myself enjoying the show a lot more than in the first half, which is definitely a good thing because I would not have powered through the show if it was bad. Like, I have a limit. Like, if halfway through the first season I'm not liking it, I'm done. As much as people will hate me for saying that's why I don't like The Office, because I'm not going to watch a whole season that I don't like, no matter how good everyone says the rest of it is. Another praise I have for the show is that it can be pretty gritty. Like, they're not afraid to show blood or anything in this show. Like, there's some parts that can actually be like, oh, I do not want to see that. Like, that doesn't happen a lot in TV shows. So overall, I would say like this was a really good season of a fantasy show, and is going somewhere promising. Now, before I haven't watched season 2 yet, and I'm planning on making a video of it, but I hear it's pretty bad because MTV dropped it because they stopped doing scripted shows, which makes sense because I've never heard of that for MTV. And then someone called Spike TV picked it up, and apparently it's not good after that, but I'm still gonna watch it just because if it's bad, it's still entertaining. Now we're gonna talk about my pros and cons with the show. Season 1. As I've mentioned, my biggest pro for this show is the beauty of it. It's a gorgeous fantasy show that really like captures the spectacularness of the world. Most fantasy stuff just tries to be gritty and dark, like depressing. Like Game of Thrones, it's pretty, don't get me wrong, but most of it's just like the grittiness of the war or whatever. I haven't really watched that show, but this show does not fail to show the beauty of the world, and I really love that about it. Another pro about it is that it's also not afraid to be gritty, because the violent scenes, they're pretty violent. There's one episode in particular that's disturbing as hell. I mean, this show was not afraid to get dirty with like blood, gore, or death. My main cons for this resides in the first couple episodes, because it feels like you're supposed to know the characters already, which makes sense because it's based off books. And I bet I would enjoy the first couple a lot more if I had read the books. But going on just the show, it feels like you're already supposed to know them completely and then watch them develop before you even can know them that well. Also in the show are the crazy love interests. 3 main characters have a love triangle throughout the show, and it's just like, the main dude's a hoe, let's be honest here. Like, he makes out and has sex with both of them as the show goes on, and then they're both jealous, but they still both keep sleeping with them or kissing him all the time. Like, what's your issue, dude? Also, in the first couple episodes, it just feels really dumb. Like, let's be honest, fantasy shows, I love them, but if you don't do them right, they can look stupid. You're saying all this corny stuff like, oh, let's go have a war with the gnomes or whatever. Like, when you're talking about gnomes, I'm thinking about that stuff in the yard. Like, I think they should have gone with dwarves. Like, that's just my opinion, but like, that's not an issue. But some of it just sounds stupid in the beginning. But then they have really good like world building to show how everybody lives in this world. It makes me enjoy the show a lot more. In the beginning, this could also be another flaw because I didn't read the books first. But in the beginning, it feels like you're already supposed to know the world and know what's going on, but you don't. And this often happens to shows adapted from books. Books have a lot more content than shows do, let's be honest, and a lot more easy world building. But I feel like they could have done a better job in the beginning of helping me be a little less confused. Or who knows, I might just be stupid. But you know my biggest con about this movie? You know what really irks me? You know what really just makes my blood boil? There's not a single unattractive character in the whole show. 10 episodes, 40 minutes long each of them. And there's not one unattractive person other than like gnomes or trolls. Like 3 main characters, attractive. All the side characters, attractive. Even random people you meet, they're attractive. It's just like, did everybody ugly die in that great war with the humans and then only the pretty people survived and that's why everyone's so beautiful? Because I'm pretty sure that's what happened. Now all in all, I really enjoyed season 1 of the Shannara Chronicles, and it's inspired me to eventually read the books after I finished the Witcher series. But now I have to get prepared for season 2 because I hear it's really bad, but I'm not going to let it destroy my enthusiasm for the books, hopefully. In conclusion, I would give this show a 7, I give it an 8 overall, season 1. It was just a fun, intriguing fantasy show, and I really enjoyed watching it, so you should too. Anyways, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this review. My next review is going to be over The Witcher Book 1, well, the short stories that come before Book 1. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.